there to here. But if I had not gone there to my place called there, I would have never got back here. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Grace Life Church podcast. I'm your host, Brian Clark. I'm the lead pastor at Grace Life Church. I'm joined by my guest, Craig Rumbley, this morning. Got a really cool topic we're going to explore this week. We're going to talk to you out of 1 Kings 17 about the concept of a place called there. And so just to give you a little bit of insight about what we're going to talk about it. This is about how to receive from God. It's about faith, how to be led by the Spirit of God, but then really how to receive from God and then walk in your destiny. And so we'll get more into that in just a minute. But real quick, just take care of some of the business. If you're new here, subscribe to our channel on Facebook or YouTube or however you're watching. Also, we'd encourage you to like and share the content that we share or that we share. If you'll share it on your timeline, it'll help us to reach more people with the gospel, help more people hear about the good news. And I'm going to do something a little bit cool. I don't have the flash drive in front of me this week, but I'm actually going to do a drawing for a flash drive on living by faith that I did, a series of teaching I did a couple of years ago that has really encouraged people, really blessed a lot of people. And so if you share, we'll put you in a drawing so you can get that. It's free. It's about, I think, 6, 7, 8 hours of teaching on faith and practically how do you live by faith so you see the promises of God. So if you'll do that, help us reach more people. So thank you for doing that. But now I want to go ahead and jump in to this passage over here in 1 Kings chapter 17. I guess I'll just read it, Craig, and then we'll start talking about it, because even just you and I talking before we started filming, I mean, this is something you've lived by, something I've lived by. And so let me just jump into the story in 1 Kings 17. It says, "And Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead said to Ahab," Ahab was the king, "As the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years except at my word." Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "Get away from here and turn eastward and hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into Jordan. And it shall be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there." So that gets into our title. The ravens fed Elijah there,
yes,
where he was called to go. They didn't feed him here where he was.
That's right.
Talk to me just a little bit, because that's, you and I have taught. You've lived out of that principle over the last 20 years or so of your life.
Well, yeah, at least the last 17, 18.
Okay.
I'll say it that way. But, one of the things that God had to teach me some things, because he had a journey for me that if I had not gone on this journey and unlearn some things and learn some new things, I wouldn't have been able to do what God has planned and his desires for me. And so I was talking to you earlier about, people say, well, how do you know the plans, or how do you know how to get to there? And one of the things is, and I was sharing with Brian, is Psalm 37:4. When you are delighting yourself in the Lord, he is able to put his plans, his purposes, and give you the desires of your heart. Well, it's not, oh, I want a red Corvette. I'm going to go get a red Corvette because I'm praying for it and that's what I'm believing God for. No, when you're seeking him, you got your heart open for him to download the plans and purposes that he's always had for you, but you're able to receive it, and you know that you know. And so, for example, back in 2005, I had my own business. I was doing very successful in business, and I went to lunch, and I was driving in my car, but I had been seeking God, and I had been to a Andrew Womack event called a Gospel Truth Seminar months prior. And at that seminar, someone there that worked for Andrew Womack's ministry said, "What are you doing to impact eternity? What can you do with your life that will impact eternity?" And that just started resonating that day when I was driving in my car on the way to lunch. It just started coming up, bubbling up in me. And all of a sudden, I got so dissatisfied with my job. I got so dissatisfied with what I was doing. what am I doing really going to impact eternity?
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Prior to going to that meeting, were you pretty satisfied with your job and with your life?
Yeah. I enjoyed what I was doing. I mean, I was involved in local church. I was doing things with the local church. So it wasn't that I wasn't seeking God. I was seeking God, but I loved the type of work. I did things with my hands. God's given me skill to do things with my hands, and so I enjoyed what I was doing. But it came up like, is this all life there is to life? It's really what started coming up. There's more to life than what I'm doing. Is it really amount to anything? And he said, what am I doing to impact eternity with my life? And really the only thing you can do that's going to impact eternity is kingdom work. It's the things of sharing the gospel with others, seeing people come into the kingdom, see people set free. And that's what God wants for us. And so he started putting a desire for me to go to Bible college. And I knew he was talking about me moving, 1,600 miles away to go to Bible college, and I'd never lived out of North Carolina.
And so let's back up.
Yeah.
So when God starts asking you to move 1,600 miles away to Bible college, he also immediately showed you the mansion on the west side of the Springs he was going to put you in, overlooking Pikes Peak, had a $100,000 a year job lined up for you, showed you that exactly when you're living in Ashburn, North Carolina, showed you where your kids were going to go to school and everything. That's how it worked, right?
Oh, no.
So
he just put in my heart to get there.
I want to get on. We'll talk more about the provision being in there. We'll do that on the next episode because I think this is really good. What you're talking about. But I think this is important too. We'll talk more about this. But in Philippians 2, I think it's verse 13, it says, God works in us to both will and to do of his good pleasure. Mm-hmm. And one of the major ways to be led by God is the desires of our heart. Mm-hmm. Is he will work in you to both will and to do of his good pleasure. Now, you believe you heard God to move to Colorado. Did you ever hear like an audible voice from heaven saying, Craig, I command you in the year 2006, move to Colorado Springs?
No, it was a change in my heart. It's like it's just I knew that I knew, and like I said, I got a holy dissatisfaction with what I was doing. Something that I'd always loved doing. It didn't bring me pleasure anymore, and so one thing I did, I talked to some friends, and one of them tried to talk me out of it. He was actually a Charis director in Atlanta. He was from Asheboro too. Originally, and we were good friends, and so I called him up, and he tried to talk me out of it, and what he was doing, he was testing me. He goes, if I could talk you out of it, it wasn't God. That's what he was doing. He was testing me, or because he thought maybe you're just going out because I went out, and we were good friends, and that wasn't the thing. And we went out, our whole family, and I guess I'll go ahead and put this in there. There's opposition. Anytime God tells you to go somewhere or asks you to do something, there's going to be opposition arise.
Yeah.
And it's for the word's sake. And see, I didn't know the calling God had on my life, but I truly believe the enemy can see it, see some of the callings that God's got on people's lives. And he's trying to keep you from getting there. And see, God was wanting to use me in a way that I'd never even thought. I was an introvert. I couldn't talk in front of people. I didn't, I was self-centered, but in the wrong way.
Right.
And
I think that's fascinating too, because, God led you a step, but he didn't show you the end from the beginning.
That's right.
And I think a lot of times, I can say this for myself too, like when I moved to Colorado Springs 10 years ago, I had a sense I would do something in full-time ministry. I just felt a call toward that. And I was making, I made $160,000 the last year we were in here, living in Kernersville. And wife, 2 kids, good job. Really would be set financially. The way that I was going would have been set by I was 32 when we moved. I'd have been set financially by the time, probably by now. I was really doing well. And yet I felt such a dissatisfaction in what I was doing with my life.
Yeah.
Like, there has got to be more than this. But that's all I knew. It was like, and I think this is true for a lot of people, when you get being led by God, it's like the horizon. You know, when you're in a boat and you go out in the Atlantic Ocean, you can see as far as the horizon. But the further you go into the ocean, the horizon changes.
Yeah.
And then eventually you'll see land, or you'll see your destination. And then as I got there, and I'm sure this is the same for you, I'll ask you about it in a minute, but like for me, I knew, I'm supposed to come back here and start a church. That's why God led me there to here. But if I had not gone there to my place called there, I would have never got back here.
That's
and so you have to be open for moving. How did that, we got a couple of minutes here on this episode, but how did that work for you? You go to the Springs, and then God,
we lived in little cabins in a place in Manitou called Summit Ministries. Very small, maybe 500, 600, 700 foot, old cabins, turn of the century. That's where we lived, and I was able to work there, and I worked at a restaurant serving, 2 part-time jobs, and went to school full-time. And so my income went way down, but God was to provide, and He was showing me that He was my source. I didn't have to depend on myself. I could depend on Him. So it was a time of learning to trust Him. And in that, while I was there, in between first and second year, we had friends that were missionaries in the Dominican Republic. I contacted us, said, hey, we found out you're in Bible school. We need someone to come this summer and serve for us so we can be stateside. So we went and served the Dominican Republic, helping them with their team house. They had mission teams coming in, and they were stateside, so we were running teams. That was our first really mission experience.
Didn't know that. That's
and then came back, and for our second year, we had to go on a mission trip, before you graduate. And so we went to Kenya on our mission trip, and the whole time, God was just birthing missions in our heart. And didn't know what it was going to look like. But we had a classmate from Kenya that said, "Why don't you come to Kenya with me? We'll do something there." Then I had the people in the Dominican Republic said, "Hey, we have facilities at our team house. You bring your family and y'all come and serve along with us in DR." So we had opportunities already being presented to us. And we prayed as a family, and one of our children came back and says, "We want to go somewhere that speaks English because we have to use interpreters while we're here in the Dominican Republic for everything." And another one came back and says, we don't want to go somewhere on the other side of the world. We want to be able to see our grandparents and our cousins. We don't want to be where we'll be years before we come back and forth. And so we said, "Lord, you hear the request. We're willing to go, but you hear the requests of our family." And it was just weeks later, that's all I can say, maybe a couple months later, some people came into our second year classroom recruiting to try to build a team to go to Belize to start a Bible school there. I want to start a Charis Bible College in Belize. And I didn't think I'd never heard of Belize. I didn't even know where it was. And so I was listening, but I wasn't really paying attention because I said, "Well, I'm not going,
Right.
And all of a sudden they said, "Oh, by the way, the official language in Belize is English." And as soon as they said that, it's like inside, something jumps on the inside of me.
Your baby leapt.
Yeah. The baby leapt inside, but the Spirit of God I perked up. And I didn't commit anything, but it triggered something in me. Well, the next day, I had a fellow classmate came up to me and said, "God told me you're going to Belize." I said, "Really?" He's going to have to tell me. But I already it was almost like a confirmation. So
that's awesome.
How it worked, and so that's I graduated 2008, and in October 3rd, 2008 is when I crossed into Belize. We drove through Mexico to get there. So my first time in Mexico was when I crossed in to drive through, and my first time in Belize was when I crossed drove in at the border.
So that's how you get from Asheboro to Springs to Belize, and it's really by being led by the Holy Spirit and being led by the desires of your heart And we'll probably talk more about that in the next episode. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this today about just how to be led by the Holy Spirit. And we're going to get more into this week about there's provision in the leading. Yeah. And so thank you again for watching. Again, if you're new here, subscribe to our station. Helps us get you fresh content every day. And God bless you. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow.